Starting? Okay, sorry. Starting now. Starting in about mid-January, almost daily, I received the question, where are you going to college next year? My response has always been, I've only found out from a couple of places so far. I find out from the rest in late March. Wow, isn't that really late? No, it's not! That's the normal time! Seriously! Of course, I never react that way, at least not vocally. But the frustration is there. I know these people maybe don't know that the majority of seniors don't make their college decisions till April of senior year, and that their interest is probably genuine, but it is so frustrating. I've spent all this time just preparing the applications to the 9 universities I've applied to. I'm in the midst of all the waiting anxiety, and they had the nerve to ask me where I'm going to college? And this, I think, is burnout. It's the track season right now, and it's actually uncanny how similar the processes of running a mile around the track and going through high school can be. The first lap, freshman year, is always the easiest. You're feeling fresh, you go out fast. The second, sophomore year in our analogy, isn't too much harder. You're maybe a little more tired, but overall, you're fairly early on in the race. The third lap is the worst. You enter the lap realizing you've only made it halfway through the race, and there's no end in sight. This is where people struggle the most, both in track and in high school. The final lap, you're soaring. You know this is it. You kick things up, you're sprinting in. And suddenly, as you're coming down the last 200 meters, you see one of your community members on the sideline, and they ask you what time you're thinking of finishing in. And that's at the back of your mind to a degree, but mostly you're just thinking about how fast you can move your legs. It's a race, and you're sprinting in, even though your legs are hurting like they never have before. And so this, I think, is burnout. High school and college admissions have become really tough. When I graduate, 15 out of the 28 classes I will have taken in high school will have been college-level courses. That's about 54% for those of you rushing to pull out your TI-84 graphing calculators. Beginning at the end of junior year, in addition to my school commitments, I had to begin studying for the standardized college entrance tests. The past 3 years, I played a varsity sport at least 2 out of the 3 seasons. This year, it's all 3. I'm ranked in the top 10% of my class, and I scored highly enough in the 99th percentile on the ACT that they had to go into decimal places to get accurate. I'm a multi-sport varsity athlete, a member of the National Honor Society, started the Decatur High School Investment Club, and have traveled to other schools to win awards in Model United Nations and Model Arab League competitions. For our Unitarian Universalist Association, I'm the Senior Dean of the Youth Caucus at General Assembly, leading a 15-person, multi-generational team in creating a week's worth of programming for hundreds of youth. And I don't say this all to brag, because despite all these accomplishments, I still wasn't accepted at my top choice school in December. And so this, I think, is burnout. Dealing with burnout is tough, and I wouldn't say I'm always effective. There's a social media trend of labeling pictures you emotionally identify with at the time as mood. I saw a picture the other day of a sign that said, "Well, aren't you a little ray of pitch black?" Mood for sure. I often joke with friends about how they don't need to worry about hurting my feelings because I'm dead on the inside. But in all seriousness, I really do think that the stresses, pains, and trials and tribulations of being a high schooler, of whom a lot is expected of and demanded of, have been emotionally numbing. The other day, a friend and I were talking about it, and I reflected that my emotional states have been reduced to mild frustration, reasonable enjoyment, and neutral, with very little granularity. And this, I think, is burnout. I would say that one of the greatest things we can do is to reduce the whiplash effects of burnout that we can cause in each other's lives. Expectations in the office, like from a boss, are one thing. My teacher's expectations about my schoolwork are one thing. But sometimes when I don't do as expected on an assignment or test, I can detect a sense of disappointment from my peers. And that's a dangerously different scenario because the expectations set by those around us have social weight. When you feel like you've let down those around you, even without impacting them, that can take the greatest toll. My biggest fear in not getting into some of the schools I've applied to, after everything I've put myself through, is not my own personal disappointment, but feeling like I've let down those around me. And this, I think, above all, is burnout. So I have two recommendations. The first is to wait until about mid-April before asking seniors where they're planning on going to college. But the second is to be careful about the implicit, unfair, and perilous expectations we can set up for others in our social relationships. Expectations which can be so destructive to self-esteem when they aren't met, because these can be the most frustrating elements of burnout. Because in order for me to look past them, I have to develop another layer of emotional security, even more numbing than the last. We can create the conditions for those around us to flourish if we're careful. But if we don't pay too close attention, we can be some of the most terrible sources of burnout in each other's lives.